I want to speak a little bit about a legal case that's been going on now for about 2 years in the UK. A bit longer than that, I think. And from the very start, I thought this was a classic example of a mountain being made out of a molehill, which is a sort of expression which means that it is an issue that is made bigger than it should be. And that is the so-called Plebgate affair. I'll give you a little bit of background and then share some of my thoughts. Now, if you're thinking, well, why are you making a video if you think it's not a big issue? I'm making a video because of the implications of the legal issue being brought about, not the legal issue itself. If there wasn't the sort of implications of this, I wouldn't care, and I wouldn't feel the need to make a video, but a verdict's been reached today, so I think it's important. So basically, 2 years ago, a cabinet member, Andrew Mitchell, he's the chief whip, it's quite a powerful position in government, was going through the gates of Downing Street on his bike, or he was trying to get through, and an altercation took place with the police officers there. And supposedly Mr. Mitchell, it was amicable at first, but then it ended up he called them plebs, which in British English is basically an insulting word. It comes from the ancient Rome, basically, and it's sort of a very patronising word, looking down on people, so it is an insulting term. And his version of events is that he said, he admitted he lost his temper, and he says that he thought these people were supposed to help him. In other words, why are they being so bureaucratic and not just letting him through? The police officer said that he was just doing his job. And anyway, what really bothers me about this case, this is the thing, how it's been allowed to go on for so long and to have been made such a big issue, when essentially what we're talking about is someone losing their temper. Now, I will say what I say when I'm talking about any legal case. I was not there, so I don't know exactly what the exchange was, and I don't know either of the people involved personally. I don't know Andrew Mitchell, and I don't know the police officer involved, so I can't make any sort of character statements. I don't entirely trust the police. I think they have a tendency to basically back their own, so whatever the Police Federation says, I don't think that could be taken as fact. Having said that, I think there's plenty of politicians that are capable of bending the truth as well. Basically, I think on reflection what probably happened was that Andrew Mitchell maybe had a long day. Obviously being a politician is a stressful job. Maybe he'd had a long day, he lost his temper, and he said some things that were not very pleasant. But even if that is true, let's say for the sake of argument he said exactly what he was accused of, he called the officer a pleb, etc. Should it have went on this long? You know, what angers me about this, and I do use that word because I think it's a big problem, is that the Police Federation have focused so much of their time on this non-issue, when what they should be doing is dealing with serious crime in London. So to me it's an incredible waste of resources. This is a trial, a libel trial, that's went back and forth and cost something like £2 million. We're talking big money. Now the verdict today is Andrew Mitchell, he counter sued the Sun for libel. He lost his case, and he says he's bitterly disappointed. The last few years have been miserable for him. The officer said something similar. I'll put a link to the BBC report. The officer has said that, bear with me a second, the pain myself and my family have been through is indescribable. Now, I'm not sure what pain he's talking about. The police have said that they're tough people, and they're not going to let a word get to them. Well, if that is the case, then why is it that the Police Federation pushed this so much? I mean, they say it's about restoring character. They say it's about their officer being slandered and so on. But I would say they've done a lot more damage to their credibility by wasting so much money on what essentially what we're talking about is a few bad words. And that's not to condone, if Andrew Mitchell did say that, it's obviously highly inappropriate for a government minister to say that. But I just think it is very sad that a man might lose his job. It doesn't matter if he's a powerful man. The fact of the matter is he might be losing his job and facing a £3 million fine, essentially for losing his temper and saying something childish. I think that's a complete disgrace. It kind of reminds me of really high divorce settlements when you hear these massive figures being spotted out. I just think it is an absolute abomination that a case like this can get national headlines, can go on for so long and involve massive money, and then you get cases of very serious crime, and it results in a perfectly lenient sentence. And there's something very, very wrong with our justice system. That something like this can go on for so long. As far as I'm concerned, there should never have been any legal situation here whatsoever. If the officer felt sort of like he was spoken down to or something, he could have answered back. I mean, Andrew Mitchell might well be an arrogant individual for all I know. So this video is not necessarily about defending what Andrew Mitchell said. And obviously that is an abuse of power. If he's a government minister, so for him to sort of talk down to someone who's just a regular officer, that is wrong. But there's no way this should ever have ended up in a court of law. And maybe, if anything, what this should do is give a pause for thought on Britain's libel laws. I mean, I just find it hard to understand how a police force that deals with violent thugs, knife thugs, criminal gangs, counter-terrorism, some very serious things, would spend so much time and resources on someone who maybe is a bit snobby, using a bad word. I mean, frankly, I think the police officers should have tougher skin. I'm not saying he doesn't have a right to be offended if Andrew Mitchell really did say that, but the fact that this would end up in a court of law, how the Police Federation let that happen, I think is a complete and utter abomination. For me, that has done far more damage to their credibility than any allegations or counter-allegations about lying. And I think the public is probably fed up of hearing about this. I think the wider public couldn't care less. Now, Ed Miliband tried to capitalise on it a while back and says, who do you believe, he had a post on the Labour Facebook page, who do you believe more, Andrew Mitchell or the police? And actually, that was a bit of an own goal, because a lot of people said neither, which is an interesting answer. In other words, people might not like the Tories, and they might not like the idea of a snobby government minister, but at the same time, they don't like the idea that the police are wasting time on something that really should not be that big a deal. Now, I'm not saying that it's right. I'm not saying that there's no problem here. But what I would propose is that we have freedom of expression in this country. People need to stop being so damn sensitive. If Andrew Mitchell was talking down I mean, this is obviously, you need to look at the context. Maybe he was genuinely frustrated, and which of us hasn't lost our temper? Now, if this is the case that Andrew Mitchell is bullying people or something like that's a serious issue, but it sounds to me like what happened was he had a long day, he thought this was unnecessary bureaucracy, and he probably said a few things he shouldn't have said. Now, probably Andrew Mitchell didn't help his own case. If he has lied, that is obviously a serious problem, and he could have made matters a lot better by simply apologising in the first place, if what he said he did say. Now, he insists that wasn't the case, so we can't know for sure. What I'd like to know is how anyone can make a judgment based on CCTV footage where there's no volume. So the judge is just believing the police side of events. I'm not going to say it's unfair, because in that situation the judge has to make a call, but I think even if he did say those things, I just have a problem understanding why they should have went to a court of law. Maybe what should have happened would be that Cameron would put a bit of pressure on him to just apologise to the officer. But the fact the Police Federation, and I'm quite angry with them for allowing this thing to go on for so long, it just doesn't really make a lot of sense. I mean, if the issue is, you see, I keep looking at it from a spectrum of, well, this is all to do with Cabinet Minister using a bad word. Maybe I need to look at it that there is more issues at play here, that it's about accountability, it's about honesty and that sort of thing. Now, I accept that those are more important issues, but I still can't help but think that the 3 million or whatever that has been used in this trial would be much. I mean, what could that money do in terms of crime fighting in London? I imagine quite a lot. That's what bothers me about this case. Now, the officer has said that it's been a really rough time for him and his family, so then why has he pushed it so far? Why has he been so keen for it to go through the whole process? Rather than just sort of, okay, he says that Andrew Mitchell said that, but why did it get to this extent? That's what bothers me. Now, if Mitchell did say those things, he should have just apologised in the first place. But what I do find sad is that a man's entire career now is going to be remembered for one unfortunate incident. And the wider public will not realise that Andrew Mitchell served as a UN peacekeeper. So I just think it's sad that he's going to be remembered for Plebgate rather than for serving as a UN peacekeeper. That bothers me. Now, like I say, I don't know Andrew Mitchell personally. He may well be an unpleasant individual, and I am not saying I do not like bullies. So if it was a case that he was very unpleasant to the officer, then that's wrong, and he should apologise. I just don't think this should go to trial, because in no other circumstance would you have such a case. So why is it MPs? Okay, they're in a position of power, they do need to set an example and so on, but I still don't think it should go to a court of law. I mean, it wouldn't go to a court of law in any other situation. If a member of public was to have a verbal altercation with the police, I don't think it would end up like this. So why should I mean, we often talk about privilege, but is it not the case that actually sometimes those in power have a disadvantage because they're under a lot more scrutiny than the average person? What I'm getting at here is how many people have lost their temper in their line of work. I have come across cops who have been rude to me, maybe because they've had stressful days. So I think there's a real arrogance from the Police Federation here. You know, a lot of people lose their temper in the line of work. If it's different if it's a continuous problem where that person is always acting like a bully, which is why I call out Gordon Ramsay. But I just think that if we have a situation where government ministers are being dragged to court because they lost their temper, it's a bit I'm just uncomfortable with that. I don't think that to me is not accountability. That is just a waste of resources that could be much better spent. I think a much better situation would have been for Andrew Mitchell to be put under pressure to apologise. But then again, the Prime Minister is in a situation whereby he's hearing two different things. So you can't ask someone to apologise if they're saying that their version of events is different from. So it basically comes down to who's being honest, Andrew Mitchell or the police officer. There's no way to know, because none of us were there. Now, I've rambled on about this for almost 15 minutes, and I don't even think a very big issue. It's certainly a small issue compared to the grand scheme of things, but the only reason I'm making this video is because of the implications, and that is that, is it right that someone is dragged before a court of law, possibly loses a job, and possibly, I mean, the Police Federation is 100% biased towards their officers. They'll always support their officers no matter what. They're the trade union for police, so they're not a neutral viewpoint. I do think I'm going to leave it there. But I do think there's in terms of the Scum newspaper, I have no respect for them, and I do think they have an agenda in slandering politicians and trying to. Well, slander is a strong word because that implies that it's not true, but you know, it's kind of like the gutter press are in no position to lecture anybody on morality, because the gutter press constantly talk down to people. So fuck them. That's my thoughts on the matter anyway.